going to be the bulk of everyone. So good evening. Welcome to tonight's neighborhood meeting. My name is Jordan Lambie and I'm a planner with the city's Development Services Department. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to present to you the neighborhood, development concept being considered by the owner and development team of 129 Collier Street prior to a formal development application being submitted to the city. This is an opportunity for you to learn about the development, ask questions, and provide some initial feedback. It is also an opportunity for the development team to hear and receive that feedback so that they can make requisite modifications to their plans prior to making their first formal development application to the city. So please be aware, we are recording this meeting for the public record. The recording will be used for the purpose of garnering your input and to respond to your inquiries. It will also be considered public information. Please also be aware that as a registered attendee tonight, your mailing or email address will be added to the mailing list so that you can receive further notification about the application as it progresses. Should you have any questions regarding this collection, please contact the Development Services Department. I would also like to let everyone know that there are staff behind the scenes tonight that are managing the technology. They're here to make sure that everything runs smoothly and to grant participants the opportunity to speak. And they can assist you with any questions through the chat function in Zoom. So please bear with us if we have any issues. And if for some reason you get disconnected, please feel free to log in again. We have had some experience in the past with people getting bumped, so you can just log right back in. So with that, the intent of tonight's meeting, as I mentioned, is to provide members of the public with an opportunity to become familiar with the development application, as well as the planning review process, and to also ask the applicant questions and for them to provide some feedback. So what can you expect during a virtual neighborhood meeting? You can expect a brief overview of the city's review process and timing, which I'll be providing, a presentation from the applicant's representative describing their proposal, and an opportunity to ask questions either to the applicant or city staff, as well as to provide comments or identify any concerns with the application as it's presented tonight. What not to expect, excuse me. You shouldn't expect that any city staff recommendations on the application or any detailed analysis on the proposal. This will occur later in the review process. You shouldn't expect a debate on the merits of the proposal between city staff and the applicant. And then subsequently our next steps. So before we kind of get into the neighborhood meeting presentation from the applicant, I just wanted to quickly highlight some of the next steps in the application review process. So this neighborhood meeting is established early in the development process to ensure that local concerns are incorporated or addressed through city review. After this meeting, we expect that the applicant will make a formal application submission for the development. Formal submissions undergo full technical review by city staff and must address comments received from this neighborhood meeting. From the city's technical requirements, or technical departments, excuse me, and external agencies, and from members of the public more broadly. In conjunction with this, a statutory public meeting will be held virtually on the application at Planning Committee. At a public meeting, applicants present their application to council, answer questions, and provide an overview of and response to any of the issues or concerns identified during a prior neighborhood meeting. As a part of the public meeting, members of the public also have the opportunity to provide verbal or written comments at that time. Following a public meeting, staff continue the technical review process, and the applicants make any necessary revisions to the development proposal. Once the review process has concluded, the staff recommendation report is brought forward to council for their consideration. All comments received throughout the review process, including those received at tonight's meeting and at the public meeting, are identified and addressed in the staff report and form part of staff's recommendation of the subject application. A staff report for this particular application would likely be brought forward to council sometime in the latter half of 2022. And with that, I will now move on to the applicant's presentation. And as I mentioned, the proposed project and application will be presented first, which will follow with a question and comment period. So tonight we are focusing on a potential official plan and zoning bylaw amendment proposed at 129 Collier Street. The applicant's planner, Eldon Theodore from MHBC Planning, is with us. And their proposal is to basically facilitate the development of two 12-story apartment buildings comprised of 293 residential units. The concept, as currently shown, would require an amendment to the official plan for the removal of commercial uses and an amendment to the zoning bylaw maintaining the existing city center zoning, but creating special provisions to accommodate additional height, reduced requirements for parking, setbacks, and commercial area. So with that, I will now hand the meeting control to Eldon, who will first introduce the team and then share the presentation of the proposed development.
Thank you, Jordan. And I'm just going to share my screen. And I'm going to start the presentation. So again, thank you everyone, and thank you to all who've come out tonight for this presentation. My name is Eldon Theodore, and I'm here on behalf of Pine Mount Developments Limited. And with me tonight is Mark Sim and Anthony Sotomayor, who represent the owners group on this property. So just to give a bit of context, the subject lands, the property is located south of Collier Street, east of Points, and north of Dunlop. This property actually has two frontages, being, and as seen here, 58 meters on Collier Street, as well as 58 meters on Dunlop Street. Apologies, I'm just having some technical difficulties. Here we go. And the property has an overall area of 0.61 hectares or 0.61 meters and 150 hectares. It's currently designated city center in the city's official plan and zoned transition center commercial C2-1 in the zoning bylaw. And I will get to both the official plan and zoning later in my presentation. So just to provide a bit of an overview of what's around the context, this is a view from the property looking the north side of the property from Collier looking south. You can see the lake in the background. Property itself is currently vacant. The view below is a view from Dunlop Street looking west towards the downtown. This is a view from the property looking east and specifically southeast towards the existing mid-rise residential building on the south side of Dunlop today. And this is a view just below that looking west and particularly northwest, showing the existing high-rise buildings as well as some of the existing residential commercial buildings in the foreground. And this over here, just as you move further along Dunlop, just showing as you progress some of the uses along the waterfront, as well as you start to enter the main core of the downtown. And moving up to Collier Street, this is a view just looking west along Collier, showing just recognizing the existence of tall apartment buildings, as well as a mix of institutional, commercial, and residential uses. And particularly as you look north on the subject lands, we have existing residential located on the north side of Collier Street. And just as you move further west along Collier, this property is in walking distance of City Hall, other shops and amenities, and as mentioned previously, stone's throw away from the waterfront itself. So just from a policy perspective, the subject lands, they are designated as shown here, city center on Schedule A of the official plan. And as shown in the second image here, it's within commercial planning area of the city on Schedule B of the city's plan. It's also within a height review area on Schedule C, recognizing that tall buildings are contemplated within the city center itself, and a demonstration of compatibility is required as part of that. And below, identifying the subject lands that they are also within the city center is an urban growth center within the province, reinforcing the role of the city center as a location for growth and intensification. So the official plan recognizes the city center as a strategic priority for focusing infill, intensification, as well as looking at community investments and interest as part of any applications that come in. From a zoning perspective, the property is zone transitional center commercial. This permits a broad range of uses, but it also recognizes the property's role at the edge of the city center, being in a transitional position from the central area commercial zone and the neighborhoods outside of the city center. So there's opportunities and recognition of that role and how that's achieved on the site. So the proposal is for two purpose-built rental towers on the subject lands, 12 stories of residential towers proposed, with the north tower along Collier being 42.1 meters and the south tower being 43.5 meters. A total of 293 residential units are being contemplated, and within that, a number of the units are being considered for reduced rental rates. And by reduced rental rates, the proposal is to increase, the overall proposal is to increase the spectrum of housing options and price points within this building that are more attainable than typical market rates within this urban growth center. So the owner is actually working with a third-party consultant to understand what the rates are within the city center, and that will help to refine the offerings for future tenants within the buildings that help to achieve a more affordable option than what is currently on the market today. And that's an initiative that the owner is taking on by themselves. In addition to that, 249 parking spaces are proposed, of which 235 residential and 14 are visitor, all accommodated on site. In addition to that, 176 long-term bicycle parking spaces and 30 visitor parking spaces as well. I apologize for the noise in the background. That is my puppy. And this is just a perspective view of an axial perspective illustrating the proposed buildings. Here on the right, the view from Collier, on the left, the view from Dunlop. And you can see the property itself has to navigate grade changes, substantial grade changes as you move towards the lake. So that's part and parcel with the overall design of this site that has to be taken into consideration, and something that both the owner and their architect and civil engineers are working towards and to ensure an appropriate transition at both levels to have street frontage. And here on the left, we have the Collier Street view, showing what the proposal will look like from Collier, and here on the right from Dunlop Street. And what's shown here is that the intent is to provide a strong podium with deep red colors, but then move towards a lighter tower that emphasizes, that gives more emphasis to the public realm and less emphasis to the actual tower component. So from a pedestrian experience, a greater focus on the tower that has a greater relationship to surrounding buildings. And this is just a cross section, again, showing how the building navigates the grades on the site. Just showing that cross section here from Collier on the left to Dunlop on the right. And the proposal intends to utilize some high quality materials that includes red brick for contextual relationship, predominantly within the building base, metal panels that provides and supports a lighter tower, and accents of glazed aluminum trim, and all of these, as well as utilizing bird-friendly glazing to ensure that the building doesn't result in any bird strikes, particularly adjacent to the lake itself. But these materials are used in combination to create interest and to create variety and an overall attractive built form. So in terms of street animation, the introduction of this building provides an opportunity to allow for a mid-block connection, and that's shown here in the blue line. So there's an attempt to be able to provide for through connections that will be accessible. But in addition, from a vehicular perspective, emphasis has been made to limit how many curb cuts or how many entry points are required from the site. So all movement in and out will occur via Collier Street and managed internally within the site. That allows for strong frontages along Collier Street and strong frontages along Dunlop Street to allow for continual street presence that offers passive surveillance and promotes a safer streetscape for pedestrian movement. In terms of the ground floor layout, and just building on that, the proposal intends to look at opportunities for spill-out terraces, particularly on Collier Street. That'll have a more, let's take a step back here. They'll have a more residential feel and a more urban frontage with much more access points and entrances that again really build on that active frontage that will help to animate the street, but also help to connect the streetscape that currently right now has a break in it, both on Collier as well as along Dunlop. And so those frontages are envisioned to have a high quality, vibrant and dynamic streetscape. So the anticipation is that lobbies and residential entrances will have that direct access to Dunlop, and having a engaging edge and high quality street level design that will really create a sense of place for both the public street and its extension onto the private property to establish a seamless relationship. And this is something we'll work through with the city in order to create that type of environment. And as I mentioned previously, all parking and loading will be managed on the site, internal to the property, screened from public view, and particularly the central ramp as you come in itself will not have any direct visibility from either Collier or Dunlop Street. And the proposal will have 4 levels of parking that will be provided, which will provide 249 parking spaces. So Jordan had mentioned the amendment to the official plan, and that goes part and parcel with the zone change. And simply the proposal is seeking reductions in the westerly side yard setback of 1.2 meters and an easterly side yard setback of 8.1 meters, a building height of 43.5 meters, as mentioned earlier in the presentation. The proposal is looking at 0 commercial coverage, and I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation, 0 commercial at the ground floor. A minimum width of 2.6 meters and a minimum width of 6 meters for both parking space and the drive aisle. That's more about meeting current standards in other municipalities and pretty typical approach. And seeking a minimum parking rate of 0.85 parking spaces per dwelling unit, which is similar to other relief or other buildings that have recently been approved in the downtown as well. But just to speak to some of those elements in terms of the setbacks itself, the proposal looks to seek a reduced setback adjacent to the commercial uses that currently exist to the west, while still retaining an ample setback along the east which will again allow for mid-block connection opportunities. That spatial relationship still allows for appropriate separation of built form, a continuous streetscape, which is all promoted within the downtown. And efforts have been made to ensure that those edges and those frontages would have minimal windows, so it protects for privacy and doesn't result in any nuisances or impacts to adjacent neighbors. And the height in itself, when you look at perspective, the zoning today allows for a 30-meter height. So what the proposal is seeking is something slightly taller as it relates to proposal. But one of the things that we've done, in particular on the Collier frontage, is once you get to that permitted height, there is a step back, and that step back helps to soften that height. So although it's a 12-story building, it will appear as 10 stories from the street, as the 12-story is substantially set back, more than your typical requirements for tall buildings. But I can go to the next slide. What I note is that the proposal is not out of context in terms of the existence of other tall buildings within the area. And the fact that the towers that are proposed here are slender towers, and they are exceeding separation distances, providing 35-meter separation, as shown previously, 32-meter separation. And that allows for sunlight, and allows for any shadows that are cast from these towers to move quite quickly across the landscape. And that's something as part of our submission that we will illustrate and show as part of the overall application. And just a point of note in terms of the height that's being proposed with the 12 stories, just recognizing some of the active applications in the downtown, ranging in heights from 10 stories to 32 stories across the city center. This really indicates that this proposal is really at a mid-range level and not over exceeding height, but represents a height that is more appropriate at the edge of the city center itself. And just lastly, in terms of the ground floor non-residential and seeking the removal of that, we're actually very conscious of whether there's an actual need, and if providing ground floor retail and commercial would contribute or take away from the vibrant downtown. We know COVID has hit downtown hard. We know that the ability for a thriving downtown is to ensure that those commercial uses can come back. We've undertaken a market study with 360 Collective to showcase the amount of retail GFA proposed in this overall growth center in comparison to other markets, and that will be included as part of our overall submission. But what it helps indicate is that providing ground floor commercial on this site would actually do more harm than good for Barrie's downtown and city center. But recognizing the transitional nature of this property near the edge of the city center, still allowing for ground floor residential that is still engaging, that still has doors, that still has permeability in terms of vision and views, will continue to ensure that those opportunities are maintained, and without compromising existing retail and commercial space and opportunities and assets that are focused in other locations, and particularly near the edge of the city center. So my last slide is just in concluding. We have been working with city staff, pre-consultations and discussions about the appropriate applications, height, density, since about 2019. We're seeking 293 units. The attainable units we're seeking is in the range of about 10% of the units within that overall building. We intend to keep the existing zoning as is, just augment some of the provisions in the zoning to permit this proposal in itself, the zoning is dated, so the provisions that we're seeking really bring into line with more current development practices. And as I mentioned in the presentation, this really kind of complements existing and recently approved developments in the area. And we're really looking forward to any comments and feedbacks that we can take back, integrate into our proposal, and include and respond to as part of our submission down the road. And that's it for our presentation. And if there are any questions, you can always put those to after this presentation, you can put them to one of the owners, Mark Sim, and his information